Hello everyone and welcome to the My Friends Don't Read book club. It is winter in New Zealand, so I have my coffee here with me to warm me up with collagen because your girl's getting old, and we're ready to talk books. So for this video, I thought I would do a spoiler-free video going over what my personal opinion is on the top 5 most trendy books for beginner readers. So I both googled this and I also asked Reddit for the most relevant trendy books that are suggested for beginner readers, and I've gone through and I've read all 5 so I can give my honest opinion on whether I think you should read them or not. Now some of these I did read in physical format and other ones I did on audiobook, so I'll make sure that I include that when I go over my review for the book because I do feel like it's quite relevant. A lot of people review a book poorly just based on the media and how they consumed it. So without further ado, let's get into book 1. So for book 1, this was the most highly recommended and is very topical because the movie is just about to come out, or maybe has just come out, I'm not sure, but it is Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. This book follows the main character who is a 70-year-old widow as she starts working in an aquarium and becomes friends or develops a type of kinship with a very intelligent octopus. So the premise in itself is very, very cozy, but this book obviously does have quite a lot of deeper themes. It comes with a lot of discussion around aging, grief, and what kind of unanswered questions can do to someone. We do actually get to hear from the octopus with their point of view, which I think is really, really interesting and makes it quite unique from other books. And the octopus knows something that the main character doesn't. This book also centers around the idea of communication and barriers to that as well. Do I agree with this recommendation, and would I recommend this to beginner readers? Yes. The prose, the way this book is written, the sentence format is absolutely beautiful. I think every line in this book is saturated with a deeper meaning or humor. It just feels like a really well-crafted book that hasn't been rushed. There were a paragraph or two in this that weren't really required for the storyline, and I think that is the reason it's gotten a couple of negative reviews, but those paragraphs are quite important for world building and setting. So I personally don't think that that takes away from the story. I will say one of the main characters, Cameron, in this book I did find to be a little bit whiny, but that's not taking away from the story itself. That's kind of just building that character in the way that he is supposed to be. Apart from that, I think the whole entire story was really, really easy to read and just a kind of a different spin on cozy and deep. Quite often you get a book that's either deep or it's cozy, and they don't always coexist, as we'll find in one that I read later. But I think this book did a brilliant job at wrapping those two together, and I'm definitely excited to watch the movie. Okay, book 2 is Automatic Noodle by Anel Newitz. I'm so bad at saying the author's names on these. Honestly, sometimes I avoid saying it deliberately just because I don't want to offend anyone. This was the second most highly recommended book as a relevant book for beginner readers. Do I agree with this one? I'm gonna say no. It's set in the future after a war, and the entire world or premise of the book is that humans have created robots / AI that have become intelligent to a human equivalent level. This book explores a group of robots who are supposed to have been liberated and have certain rights, as they find they are still stuck working in contracts, and because they don't have full rights, they feel they are still slaves. They end up taking over a restaurant that serves food to humans, and it follows their journey in doing that. So there is quite a lot of deep themes in this one. I do think that this book does trigger some really deep thoughts on slavery, especially after slavery has been made illegal, but the barriers that then come in to actually stop equality. I also think it's a really interesting way of thinking about what we're doing with robotics and AI, and how far humanity is kind of willing to go to use something as a tool to benefit us. I do think that this Hi. Yeah. Suki Lala. I do think that it's quite important to read a book like this Maybe not this one, I do know there's a whole bunch of this type of genre coming out, but I think it is important for humans to think of the larger consequences of using AI and that type of stuff. But would I say this particular book should be recommended to beginners? No. And the reason for that is mainly because I think a beginner reader would actually struggle to finish this book, or to at least get into it at the start. This book is super heavy on the tech terms. I feel the author kind of rushed their world building a little bit because it is actually a really short book. It's more of a novella. But in rushing those aspects, they start talking about cryptocurrency, AI intelligence, robots, and stuff like that right off the bat. And if you don't have any prior knowledge of those things, I do think it would be really, really hard to follow the terminology and what's being talked about. I definitely think you need some type of existing knowledge before you go into the book about that industry. Otherwise, it is really, really easy to get lost and to have to Google things to understand where the book is going, which can really put you off, especially as a beginner reader. It is a fun and cute idea for a book. I just don't think the execution was quite there. One, on those little bits of world building that I think really were required to properly understand the book. But two, also in character development. I didn't really find myself that invested in any of the robots. I feel like we were kind of almost forced to like them. It didn't happen naturally over the course of the book. So that kind of meant without being invested in the plot of the book, all the book was a discussion about a social issue, which I'm all for. I think we should be educated in many ways, but I think a lot of people are reading this book for a cozy comfort book, and if it's just a book preaching at you about certain ideas rather than a story that you're invested in, that can be really hard to get a beginner reader reading an entire book, even if it is only just a novella. I will say the positive for that book for a beginner reader is the robots do encounter problems, and all of those problems are solved within a couple of pages. Some people think of that as bad. I would say for a beginner reader, it's actually probably quite good because you don't have to have that huge investment into the book to get to the end to solve all of the problems. But would I recommend to a beginner reader? Overall, no. Our third book is one that I listened to as an audiobook, and I highly suggest it as an audiobook, and that is Yesteryear. Yesteryear has a whole swarm of content talking about it. It is one that has hugely mixed reviews. Personally, I really enjoyed it, and I do think it would be perfect, like the perfect book for a beginner to read. It's about a famous influencer trad wife who is posting a certain old-fashioned religious life online and pushing it to her followers as something that anyone can attain for a certain price. She's not even that happy in the life she's pretending to live, but she pushes it anyway because that's the platform that she's happened to find, and this is how she's kind of gained success, and she thinks she's going to get herself out of her situation. She ends up waking up in 1855 and has to live the life that she was pretending to enjoy so much to all of her followers. Premise of the book, amazing. A lot of the negative reviews about this say that the premise just wasn't done that well. I disagree with that. I think it was done pretty well for what it's supposed to be. It is satire. It is a very, very cynical book, and you are reading it through a main character that you will not like. If anyone does like Natalie, I don't think we can be friends. But in saying that, even though you don't like the character, you are still invested in her storyline. You still want her to find out what's going on. And I think ultimately you kind of still wish her the best. For me, I wanted her to learn her lesson and to understand how cynical and hypocritical she was. But I didn't want her to die. I don't know if everyone feels the same. But yet even with that really, really annoying main character, I still found it really interesting to follow the story along the whole book. I found the pacing really good, so I think a beginner reader would enjoy that. And I do think the biggest thing is that I listened to it on audiobook. The narration for this book is amazing. I would say the best audiobook that I've ever listened to, and this list of books does include one that is well known for its audiobook. This one is even better. The narrator captures Natalie's voice so incredibly well. It was really, really interesting to read. So this one obviously also has themes of a social issue. We're talking a lot about social media, posting parts of your life and not others. and the importance of actually having strong morals rather than being performative. So it does have those deeper issues, but I do think because the story itself is so interesting, you can kind of take more from those social issues rather than just feeling like you're being preached at by the author. So I definitely do recommend this one, especially on audiobook. Book 4 is Project Hail Mary. So I listened to this one on audiobook as well, and I also definitely agree with Reddit and Google that this is a good beginner read. Project Hail Mary is about a lone astronaut. He wakes up in space and his crew members have passed away. He has memory loss and he doesn't quite know why he's there, but eventually he comes to realize that he is the last hope for humanity and he has to figure out a problem threatening life as we know it back on Earth. When I heard about this book and the movie, honestly, I thought it would be really boring. I kind of thought, but it's just one man stuck alone in space. Like, what could possibly happen? How could this story be moving on for this amount of pages? But I was wrong. There was a lot that happened. This is another one where the audiobook narration was really, really good, and I highly suggest listening to it that way rather than reading it. That's mainly just because I don't know, I've never read it, so I don't know how the sounds from the audiobook are actually going to come across when you're reading it. There are certain sounds in the audiobook that I just actually don't understand how you would get if you were just reading. I will say the book is quite long. Once something starts happening, it is really fast paced, and this book is the definition of a feel-good book. It is a book where humanity is facing a terrible, terrible situation. It's dark and it's witty, and it shows you humans doing bad things, but in the end it also does show you how good humans can be, the sacrifices and the love that we have, and kind of what the good parts of humanity are. Because of that, I think it's quite timely. I think everyone could use a little pickup and a reminder of how amazing humans can be when we get a little bit too cynical and when bad things are happening a lot. The other up for this is that there is a movie that's come out. It does mean that if you're a beginner reader and you don't have friends that read yet, you can read the book and then afterwards you can all sit down with your friends and watch the movie, and you still have people to discuss the book with. So there is a major up for this book as well. And the last book is a psychological thriller. So I thought this was going to be my favorite, to be honest, because I do quite like a thriller, but I ended up not rating it that highly, and I don't recommend it for beginner readers, and that is The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. This book is about a woman in a little bit of a desperate situation who signs on as a live-in maid for a wealthy couple. The wealthy couple has secrets, and it's kind of about that main character figuring out the situation that she's in and surviving. This book was rated 4.3 stars, and it was number 5 rated on the most relevant topical trendy books for a beginner to read. But I just don't think I agree with that, and it might be because I looked into the ratings before I read it, so it made me think really highly of it, which obviously causes a little bit of disappointment when it doesn't live up to that. The main reason I don't recommend this to a beginner is because the book is supposed to be full of really good plot twists, and personally I saw the plot twist coming, and I found it really, really annoying that the main character didn't. We are following a main character who is quite slow to pick up on things, and that can be really frustrating to read. I do think the story was good, and I like a plot twist even if I personally saw it coming, so I wouldn't say the story is worthless. I would say maybe watch the movie, because that's an hour of your time rather than 10 reading the book. You might not be so disappointed in that twist if you did happen to already see it coming like me. The writing was definitely accessible for a beginner. There was nothing crazy in the prose, but just a little bit of a letdown with that plot twist that kind of made me feel a little bit disheartened in reading thrillers like that, and I think a beginner reader shouldn't have that as their first experience with thrillers. So yeah, to me, I would say that wouldn't be on my top 5 at all. I am going to do a video on my personal top 5. I think that would be good, but my next video I'm going to do is although I just said I loved Project Hail Mary, and I do, and I definitely recommend it for a beginner, there was scientific inaccuracies in it, and see, this is what I was saying in my previous video. Because I am a scientist, I kind of tend to stay away from sci-fi because I nitpick, and that's a me problem. That's not a beginner reader problem, and that's why I didn't put it in this video, but I'm going to do a video about what I thought of the actual plot points of Project Hail Mary, and that will of course include spoilers. So that will be my next video. So let me know if you are interested in going over books in that manner, and definitely like and follow along for that one. But yeah, thank you so much for talking with me about books. And if you've followed me this far on my YouTube journey, I am a couple of months in. I feel like I'm getting a little bit better at filming myself. But I am still really wanting to reach that book community. So please, if you know book lovers, or you know someone that's been wanting to get into reading but hasn't had the book recommendations to do it, please send them the link to this video or my page. I appreciate every like, every view, every comment. And thank you for watching the My Friends Don't Read Book Club.